Ever since I was a little kid, I always loved going to the arcades, but there was one game that whenever I would see it would be at an arcade, I would always try to make sure and walk all the way around the arcade to avoid it. And that game was CarnEvil. Because whenever I saw that game, I would get scared. And it wouldn't just be the kind of scared where I'd be scared in the moment. I would think about it later in the day. I would think about it when I was trying to go to bed. And though I've forgotten many of the games I used to play at the arcades, I never fully forgot CarnEvil. And so a few years ago, I decided to look into it again. And in doing so, I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that it wasn't nearly as scary as I had once thought it was. And in fact was now kind of right up my alley. And so today when we take a look at this game, I kind of want us all to be thinking about what are those things that we would see when we were kids that really got us scared, that maybe now if we revisited them, we might realize that they're not actually that scary, and in fact are actually a lot of fun. CarnEvil was developed by Midway Games, the company that brought us Mortal Kombat, so the fact that it's extremely violent really shouldn't be that surprising to us. CarnEvil was not Midway Games' first light gun shooter. In fact, they had already had quite a bit of success in the genre with Terminator 2 Judgment Day and Revolution X, which if you don't know is an arcade shooter based around the band Aerosmith. And though those games had done well for the company, when Midway saw that one of their competitors, Sega, had put out House of the Dead, a horror game in the genre, they decided to take their own crack at that. And so in 1998, CarnEvil was released. The head designer behind the game was a man named Jack Hager, who originally wanted the game to use stop-motion animation, though limitations at the time didn't let this become a reality. And though when the game was released it would include extremely graphic violence for the time, it was originally conceived to have a tone closer to that of Disney's Haunted Mansion. But blood and guts were big money at the time, and so the violence was ramped up to 11. Midway knew that some of the violence in the game might be a little too much for some people to handle, considering the fact that one of the bosses is a giant baby. So they included a switch in the game that would allow the owners of the cabinets to change that boss from a giant baby to a giant teddy bear. Now, like with most arcade shooters, there isn't much of a story to be found here. The majority of what is told is relayed during two cutscenes, one at the beginning of the game and one at the end of the game. These cutscenes were directed by a man named Tim Miller, who has gone on to have a very successful career in Hollywood, directing the first Deadpool movie and producing such films as Terminator Dark Fate and the Sonic the Hedgehog series, as well as being the executive producer on the Netflix series Love, Death, and Robots. The game begins with this narration laying the groundwork for the story ahead.
When the moon is full and trees are bare, walk through the cemetery if you dare, where skeletons rot and corpses fester. Locate the tomb with the skull of a jester. Feed him the token all shiny and new. It is then that CarnEvil will return for you.
At this point, the player, who's controlling a character who we know literally nothing about, is going on a spooky ghost tour. At this point, the protagonist jumps off of the tour and finds himself at the tomb of Ludwig von Tokentaker, the owner of the evil fair CarnEvil. At the beginning of the game, you can choose between 3 different levels: the Haunted House, Rickety Town, or the Freak Show. After completing all 3 of these, you can move on to the Big Top. On the Haunted House level, you'll find yourself fighting things like zombies and spiders and ghosts, as well as a mini-boss named Hambone, which is directly referencing Jason Voorhees, and then finish off by battling Evil Marie, who is a reference to Marie Antoinette. In my favorite level, the Rickety Town, you'll find yourself fighting giant flies, elves, dinosaurs, and a bunch of mechanics named Mr. Smiley. And to finish it all up, you battle Krampus at the end of the level. Probably the most disturbing level in the game is the Freak Show, where you fight a mini-boss named Cyclops, as well as some spider monkeys and some disturbing creations such as the Flapjack, which is 2 human torsos sewed together at the waist. And as I mentioned before, this is the level that has Junior, a giant baby, as the final boss, though he can be subbed out for the giant teddy bear, Deddy. After completing those 3 levels, you get to move on to the Big Top, where you mostly just fight clowns. There are some mimes which I'm not entirely sure can even hurt you, which to me is extremely funny. After battling your way up the tent, you find yourself on Tokentaker's Zeppelin, where you have the final battle, where eventually you force him into a propeller where he's cut into a million pieces, which somehow manages to be one of the less gory things you see in the game. Then you get your closing cutscene where you see that everything is back to normal, and our hero is there with Betty, the only other human being that was around during the entire game. And then what does he do? He takes the golden coin, puts it back into the tombstone, and starts the whole thing up again. So why did I find it so scary? I think that really comes down to the fact that I was seeing a lot of things in this that I had never seen before. Like, you gotta realize, the first time I saw it, I was probably less than 10. And when you see disturbing things like this that are new to you, I think it's natural to react in a way of fear. Now, of course, some people really kind of lean into these things, but my personality type is definitely one to retreat. But now having returned to it, I'm really glad that I did. It's like so often I think that we can be scared of things as a kid and just live with that fear for the rest of our lives, completely forgetting the fact that we grow and change as people. And it's only in returning to these things that we can realize that we have overcome a lot of the things that we thought we wouldn't be able to. And we can put silly things like CarnEvil in their proper place. So then I bring this question back to you. What are some things that you were afraid of as a kid that you haven't had the guts to return to now that you're older? This Halloween, are you ready to brave those things? And maybe realize that now you're braver than you used to be.